Welcome, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always. What do we have today?
Today, we're diving into a story about healing um, and spiritual growth. Really, really remarkable
Oh,
stuff.
I love those. Always inspiring to see the resilience of the human spirit.
Right. And this one especially, we're going to be looking at excerpts from chapter 35 of a book, and the author really digs into her journey of replacing fear with love.
Sounds intriguing.
And it's not, just some theoretical thing for her. She's faced some really intense medical challenges over the years.
I was going to say, that sounds like a deeply personal journey. What kind of challenges are we talking about?
We're talking meningitis,
Oh, wow.
sepsis,
Yeah.
even Waterhouse-Friderichsen syndrome, all before she even turned 17.
Wow. Waterhouse-Friderichsen syndrome, that's not something you hear every day.
I know, right?
What even is that?
Right. So it's a really severe complication, often comes along with bacterial infections, and it can lead to organ failure.
Oh.
And for her, it actually resulted in skin grafts. And she even talks about, like, witnessing her body trying to heal with her shin bones exposed.
Oh my God. To go through something like that at such a young age, it's unimaginable.
I know. You think that's it, right? But it's not.
Oh no, there's more.
Doesn't end there. Then she has to deal with IPP for over 20 years.
ITP, that's a blood disorder, right?
Yeah, it causes dangerously low platelet counts. So imagine having to go to the hospital every year and a half because your body isn't clotting properly. That was her reality.
Oh, that's heavy stuff. So we're talking decades of serious health issues. I mean, no wonder she felt the need to really examine her fears and kind of find a new way of being.
Exactly. So the question is, where do you even begin?
Right, where do you even start after all that?
Well, she dives into a whole whirlwind of spiritual practices.
Okay.
Christianity, Ayurvedic medicine, yoga, meditation, chakra energy, crystals. She even touches on quantum physics.
Wow, that's quite the range. She's really exploring it all.
I know. It makes you think, right?
Yeah.
How many of us are kind of dabbling in different things, trying to find what clicks for us?
Totally. It's that human search for meaning. It's so personal.
Exactly. And for her, it becomes this way of understanding not just her spirituality, but her body too, and its amazing ability to heal.
A body is incredible, right?
Speaking of healing, those chakras.
Mm.
Can we talk about those for a sec?
Sure, yeah.
For people who might not be familiar, what are those all about?
Right. So you might know chakras from like yoga. They're considered these energy centers in the body, and each one is associated with different emotions and physical functions.
Okay.
So it seems like she was exploring whether working with these energy centers, could contribute to her well-being.
Interesting. It's amazing how she's mixing these ancient practices with modern science,
Right.
but it's not all easy going, right? She hits a bit of a snag in this journey.
Oh, what happens?
So there's this really pivotal moment she describes. During meditation, she's hit with this wave of, like, suffocating fear.
Ooh, that's unexpected. Meditation is usually seen as this path to peace,
Right.
to tranquility.
That's what I thought. So it makes you think, what happens when the practice that's supposed to calm you down actually triggers this huge panic?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. It sounds like a turning point.
It was a turning point. It forces her to really confront that fear head on.
Wants to face it, right?
She actually writes, "Love and fear are incapable of existing within the same time and space."
Whoa, that's powerful. It's so true, though. It makes you think about how often fear blocks us from experiencing love fully.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin, and you can only choose one.
Exactly. And in that moment, she makes choice. That encounter with fear becomes the starting point for this deep exploration of her own mind.
Okay, I'm hooked. We're about to uncover the heart of this journey. I can't wait to see where it goes.
Me too. Stay tuned, because this is where her resilience, her self-awareness, it really shines through. She goes on this path of radical transformation.
Let's dive into part 2.
So, we left off with her exploring all these spiritual practices, like she was trying to, I don't know, gather tools for this big journey.
Yeah, like putting together her healing toolkit.
Exactly. But then she has that moment with the fear during meditation.
Right.
And that's when things really start to change.
That's when the real work begins. It's like she realizes that all those practices, they're not enough on their own. She has to deal with this underlying fear that's been driving her like her whole life.
Right, and that's tough stuff. She talks about this process of like dismantling her quote mindful shadows end quote.
Mindful shadows. Okay, that sounds intense.
Right. So these are like deeply ingrained beliefs and patterns, things that were really holding her back.
Hmm. So what kind of shadows are we talking about here?
Well, she doesn't go into like every single one, but she does talk about this fear of not fulfilling her soul's purpose.
Yeah.
And, after everything she's been through, it's understandable.
Right.
You start to question, of course, why am I here? What's my purpose?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's something a lot of people can relate to, even without facing, such extreme challenges. We've all had those moments of, like, am I living up to my potential?
It's a big question for sure.
It is. It's a universal question.
Yeah.
And, it's really interesting how she connects this fear of unfulfilled purpose back to her earlier experiences with, being sick, with her illness.
Right.
And she starts to realize that as difficult as those experiences were, they shaped her
Yeah.
in really profound ways.
So it's like she's taking those experiences, those things that felt so negative, and she's starting to weave them into her story. And it's
Right.
part of what makes her, right?
Exactly. And that shift in perspective, it's huge. It's about reframing those challenges, those shadows, and seeing them as opportunities for growth.
Absolutely.
It's not about denying the pain or pretending it wasn't hard. It's about taking all of it. Yeah.
And integrating it into this larger narrative of healing and transformation.
I love that. Okay, so she's doing all this deep inner work.
Mm-hmm.
She's facing her fears, she's reframing her past.
Mm.
But how does she do, like, what does that look like in practice?
Right. How do you actually dismantle those shadows? Well, she doesn't, give us a step-by-step guide,
Okay.
but she talks about awareness, like really paying attention to her thoughts and her beliefs, especially the ones that were causing her pain or holding her back. It's a lot like, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, okay. So it's about noticing those negative thought patterns
Yes.
and then challenging them.
Precisely. And she does this by questioning those thoughts. She asks herself, like, is this true? Is this actually serving me?
Hmm.
And by doing that, it's like she creates space for new beliefs that are more empowering.
It's like she's clearing out all the clutter, making room for something new to grow.
I love that. That's a great way to put it. And it's important to remember that this process, it's not just about, dismantling the negative. It's about building something new too.
Right. Something stronger.
Stronger, more resilient. So it's not enough to just let go of the fear. You have to replace it with something else.
Okay, so what does she replace it with?
Well, for her, it's love.
Love.
She actually writes, and I love this quote. She says, "I was not surprised to find that love remains the easiest to follow. It becomes her guiding principle,
Wow.
her compass.
It's beautiful. But how do you actually do that? How do you choose love,
No.
especially when you're faced with so many challenges and fears and just the realities of life?
Right. How do you actually put that into practice? Well, she talks about self-love as the foundation.
Yeah.
She realizes that she can't really love others until she learns to love herself, to
Yeah.
accept herself fully, shadows and all.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. And that's, that emphasis on self-love, it's a big part of what we call self-compassion, which is like a huge focus in psychology these days.
Okay, so how does she practice self-love? Does she give us any examples?
Well, she talks about being kind to herself,
Okay.
forgiving herself for past mistakes and honoring her needs
Yeah.
and her boundaries.
Right. So it's not just about, like, bubble baths and chocolate, although
Hmm.
those are nice too,
Of course, always good.
but it's about something deeper.
It's about a deeper level of self-acceptance and self-care. And, I'm starting to see how it all connects, this deconstruction of fear and then this cultivation of self-love and this choice to follow love. It's a powerful combination.
It really is. And what strikes me is, she doesn't present this as, like, the finish line.
Right.
Like, oh, I've arrived, I'm enlightened. She's really honest about the fact that it's a journey.
It's ongoing.
There are ups and downs,
It is
moments of doubt,
Mhm.
struggles.
It's not about achieving perfection. It's about showing up every day
Yeah.
and making that conscious choice to choose love, even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
And, the fact that she's so vulnerable, that she's willing to share her struggles, that's what makes her story so relatable and inspiring.
It really does.
Because it reminds us that we're all in this together, and that even when things are tough, we always have a choice.
We do.
We can choose love.
That's a beautiful thought. And I think it leads perfectly into the final part of our deep dive. We've seen how she deconstructed the fear, how she embraced love. But I'm curious to see what that actually looks like, in her everyday life.
Me too. Let's dive into part 3 and see how she puts these principles into action.
Okay, so part 3. We've seen her deconstruct fear, embrace love. But what does that look like, practically in her life?
Well, one thing she talks about a lot is trusting the process.
Yeah, we touched on that earlier, but
Yeah.
what does that mean, like, day to day?
So she describes it as like surrendering to something bigger than herself.
Okay.
It's not about being passive. It's more about recognizing that you don't have to control every outcome.
Yeah?
Like she learns to lean into her intuition and have faith that she's being guided even when things feel uncertain.
Hmm. That's so hard, though.
Yeah.
We all want to know what's going to happen, right? Like, we want the answers.
That natural.
But
Yeah.
it makes you wonder if letting go, like really letting go of control, maybe that's actually how you find peace.
Maybe, maybe. And it all circles back to her exploration of all those spiritual practices.
Yeah.
It's like she's taken bits and pieces from different traditions and created her own like personalized way of dealing with life.
Well, that's so cool. So it's not about following one specific path. It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly, exactly. And one of the most interesting examples of this is how she deals with other people's perceptions of her.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so remember, she's been through so much physically, right?
Right, and she talks about how people often project their own fears and limitations onto her.
Yeah, that makes sense. People see her medical history, and they might assume things about what she can or can't do,
Absolutely.
what her life should be like.
Right, and that's where, her commitment to self-love and boundaries really comes in.
Okay.
She realizes that she doesn't have to internalize those projections. She can choose to honor her own truth.
Own experience.
Exactly, even if it doesn't fit with what other people expect.
Wow, that takes so much courage,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with, societal pressures and expectations about illness and disability.
I know, but it's so powerful. It's like she's reclaiming her story.
I love that. And it all goes back to self-awareness and
Yeah,
self-compassion, right?
Right.
Like she knows she can't control what other people think,
No. Yeah.
but she can control how she reacts to it.
Exactly. And instead of, shrinking back or trying to fit in, she chooses to just be herself.
Yeah.
Say like, this is me, take it or leave it.
It's so powerful. And this whole journey, this replacing fear with love,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just about her own transformation, right?
No, it's bigger than that.
It impacts the people around her too.
It ripples outwards.
So it's not just about, feeling good. It's
Mhm.
about making a positive difference in the world.
Exactly. Because when you choose love, when you choose compassion and understanding, it radiates out.
Yeah.
It affects how you interact with people, how you show up in your relationships, how you contribute to your community.
And in a world that often feels so divided, so disconnected, that kind of energy is so important.
It is. It's like a beacon of hope.
It really is.
Yeah.
And at the end of the chapter, she leaves us with this beautiful image.
Oh, tell me.
She's talking about a moment where she's just overcome with emotion.
Yeah.
And it's not just joy or happiness. It's like this feeling of wholeness. Like she's integrating all parts of herself.
The light and the shadow.
Yes.
It sounds like the culmination of everything she's been working toward.
It does, doesn't it? This complete acceptance of herself, flaws and all.
And it reminds us that real healing, real transformation, it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about embracing the whole human experience with
Yeah.
all the messiness and the beauty.
That's a beautiful message to end on. It's about letting go of perfection
Yeah.
and just being present.
Trusting the journey.
The journey, exactly. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired right now. This whole deep dive has been amazing. A real reminder that even when things are tough, we have the power to choose love.
To choose healing, to choose growth.
Yes. To our listeners, we hope you found this exploration as insightful as we did. Remember, the power to replace fear with love, it's within all of us. Until next time, keep diving deep.
And keep choosing love.